I'm Martin Hemingway. I'm the ERO nationally. I'll be chairing the second part, the management coordinator part. The first part will be chaired by Sarah Dryden, the deputy ERO, who will now take over and carry on with the first batch.
Righto. The format for this evening, we're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to give a brief presentation. And then we've got a few questions that we collected from the registration form. And then we're going to open to questions from the Q&A box. So, candidates for chair, if we could just get the opening statement from Ewan first of all. Is he back?
I'm here and I'm unmuted, I hope, Sarah. Okay. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So, hello, everyone. I'm Ewan Jones, and I'm here because we need urgent action on the climate and ecological emergency. And to do this, we need big business action. And to do that, to reverse the exponential resource consumption, we need government action. The only way that we're going to do that is through, I can hear some stuff, Sarah, by legislation. And we need a strong Green Party to deliver that. I'm standing for GPEx chair because I've been asked by enough people who I respect greatly to do this. I'm afraid the past 4 years have been held back by a GPEx, and I mean the whole Green Party has been held back by a GPEx that has struggled with internal discord. We do not have time for that. It needs to stop. GPEx is not the place for internal policy and personality disagreements. So, to date, with the Green Party, I've focused on the can-do parts of the party, which have been the regions and our success in local elections and the Green councillors. As South West Green Party chair since 2015, we have refocused our party around supporting our field organiser in delivering professional elections and delivering conferences for that purpose. Now have 16 councillors. We had the best ever European result with 18% in May, and we some of the best general election results ever. I have also focused on the town councils, where I was proud to be announced as Mayor of Bruton last February, when I was asked to do so when our previous mayor resigned over public racist outbursts. I've stopped at 2 minutes, Sarah.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Great, that's perfect. Thank you very much. And then we'll go to Ashley and Benjamin.
I can't see his camera feed.
Cool.
Want to go first, Ash?
Yeah, sure. I think it's so for the pair of us, we both feel like there is a lack of representation in party leadership right now, and also there is a big need for modernisation in the way we run the party generally. A lot of the processes that we communicate with our members with are very, very dated. There's a lot of email spam going out, which creates a situation in which members are just ignoring emails from the Green Party because they're getting so many. And so it's kind of counter to what we want. There's not a lot of direct engagement with GPEx. So we want to create a means of doing that. We want to create a platform through which members can meet the members of GPEx and ask questions of them and learn about them and learn about what they've been doing. We think that representative groups within the party need to have their voices championed, not just by being quoted here and there, but actually being given an opportunity to speak directly with GPEx on issues that are really important to them. And we also think that there are a lot of quite divisive debates going on within the party, and a lot of members and including higher up people in the party, people in positions of responsibility, perhaps losing sight of party philosophy and the regulations that they're supposed to follow as members. So we would make sure that those are respected and followed to ensure that everyone's able to feel included within the party, and also feel like they're actually being heard and that they're being respected.
Cool. So, and then is Adrian around?
Okay, my video's been stopped by the host, so
Oh,
thank you.
okay, cool.
Oh, I'm there. Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. I was still playing with the technology, trying to get myself sorted. So good evening. My name's Adrian Sporrell. I'm the treasurer of the Luton and Bedford Green Party. And I'm standing for the role of chair of GPEx and would like you to vote for me. I'm standing for 3 key reasons. Firstly, as a party, we have to become the organisation we need to be. We just aren't dynamic enough, flexible enough, or effective enough. And to address that, we've really got to get the political strategy sorted, we've got to get our fundraising sorted, and we need to get our constitution sorted. When we have those in place, we'll have the platform from which we can start to build. Secondly, we really need to address our culture. A number of the other speakers have already mentioned about how we have too much internal arguing. I don't want to stop the arguing because that's important from political point of view. We have to have those debates and we have to work them through, but we have to learn how to argue and debate really well. And at the moment, we don't do that. Finally, I don't think as an organisation, we communicate through and across the party enough. I'm always astounded when I go out and I talk to people about the political strategy, about how few people even know it exists, let alone use it. And that needs to change too. Unless we come together, we can't address the crucial challenges that we're facing, both on an environmental and social basis, and the fact that we're running out of time on the environment. So for my living, I look after a consultancy, and we help organisations work more effectively. This is what I do for a living. I've been in the Green Party for a number of years now, and last year saw me standing to be the Mayor of Bedford. I didn't get very far because it is a massive Lib Dem majority, but I did actually retain our deposit for the first time and acted as a suitable air cover for the first 2 Green Party candidates to get elected in Bedford ever. So please vote for me. Thank you.
Perfect. So then Liz. Liz, are you about? Oh, there we go.
Muted. Right. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Reason, and I'm currently chair of GPEx. And in my current capacity, I've been professionalising operations, appointing an experienced chief executive and supporting them to build a team of committed staff to deliver on the party's ambitions. I've been developing the fundraising strategy through the new development committee, and we're aiming to attract more money from a wide range of appropriate sources to meet one of the party's biggest challenges, our limited budget. And I've been trying to improve decision-making because the holistic review, which I championed, passed with a big majority, but is yet to be implemented. I want to see this through to modernise the party's governance arrangements. So over the next couple of years, if elected, I will concentrate on 3 areas that are already underway. First, uniting the country around a fresh green start and making it happen through inclusive politics through our project together. to increase income and financial sustainability are absolutely essential if we're going to build on the electoral successes we've already had, because we need to invest in the field team, in further campaign schools, in digital tools to allow us to communicate better and more efficiently and effectively than we do at the moment, training for councillors, candidates and governance body members, and identifying and nurturing a cohort of potential candidates to be ready for the next general election. And thirdly, to open up conversations using the principles of non-violent communication to resolve the internal differences that have already been mentioned and to allow us to focus on real and urgent change through dialogue, working things through together. I really want the party to make a step change in its size, capacity and achievements. This can be done if we raise our ambitions, if we are bold, and above all, if we work together.
Great, that's 2 minutes from all of our candidates. Thank you very much. So now we've got some questions that were sent in through the Action Network sign-up form. What would your first 3 priorities be if you're elected? So let's go with Ben and Ash first.
Let Ben take this one.
Okay.
Can you stop my video, please, Sarah?
Oh, yeah, you should be able to start your own video.
Letting me. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Our 3 priorities should be in Ash related to GPEx. First of all, we want to improve on transparency within the process of GPEx. We feel it's been lacking greatly in the last couple of years. We want to make sure that processes and how things are decided in GPEx become more open to everybody involved. We want to focus on inclusion and make sure that everybody in the party feels safe regardless of their background. That includes people from different ethnic backgrounds, people who are differently abled, disabilities, people with people regardless of sexual background, regardless of gender and so forth. The party's been making good steps in the right direction, but we need to end the divisive discourse and we need to support the reform of the GRA and ensure that's enacted fully. And lastly, we really want to focus on modernisation. This is one of our key points. How we communicate to members, how we encourage dialogue, how we come across the public in general needs to be updated. And another part that members have told us they want to see changed is that how the members website works in particular. We need to finally end up closing the old members websites and bring it all into one space to keep everything in place centrally and make it all sensible. So those are our 3 priorities should we be elected.
Thank you very much for that. If we go Adrian, same question.
Thank you. 3 priorities for me. Finish the existing work that I've been involved in GPRC. So that's finishing the political strategy and how it links to the fundraising strategy, drive through the constitution and all the other modernisation initiatives that are already going. So all of that work has to be finished and finished rapidly. I think the second priority would to be meet all the leaders. So the newly elected leaders, the co-chairs of GPRC, my GPEx colleagues, and start to agree how, as a senior leadership team, we can start to come together and actually work together instead of against each other to lead the party forward and to deliver the changes that need to happen. And I think and obviously set out our key priorities in what we want to achieve. And I think my third priority would be about widening our appeal. I'm very conscious that we often get criticised for being middle class and genteel, and we need to actually ensure that our membership is really representative across all of the country. And we have to work out how we do that, obviously, both through England and Wales. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then let's go for Liz. You're muted, Liz. You're still muted, sorry.
Right, now I'm unmuted. Okay, so I think I set out my priorities to start with, but perhaps I'll establish a bit more. First of all, you know, increasing the party's resources is essential. And I keep hearing the phrase, we're taking a knife to a gunfight. And, you know, we absolutely have to be able to compete if we're going to lead to get electoral success. I've talked about the expansion of the field team and the training of local party members and so on through campaign school and so on. And I also want all the governance bodies to be working to a common purpose, because I have to say that as chair of GPEx, I have established and learned that the checks and balances in the current constitution can get distorted and can lead to GPEx itself actually feeling that it doesn't have the powers it needs to run an effective and efficient operation. And I would make that a key priority.
Okay, thank you very much. And then Ewan, same question. I think you're muted, Ewan.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So my 3 priorities are 1, training, 2, strategy, and 3, elections. Regarding training, I mean training for GPEx. GPEx needs training in being a cooperative director, which is a huge responsibility and is a barrier for inclusion. So I will work with our Chief Executive, Mary, to organise some Co-ops UK training for our first GPEx meeting in October. Secondly, I will complete the Project Together strategy and the overdue political strategy. We have had, we bust through the 300 councillors target last May. We've needed a new political strategy since then. The Project Together strategy, which I've now seen presented 3 times by Mary, is actually looking really good and heading in the right direction. I'm particularly delighted by the PS 2030 goal of we need urgent government action to address the climate and ecological emergency. There are some issues that need to be resolved, such as the move from internal to external focus to increase our impact up to 2024. And to do that, I will ensure that we resource and evolve our field team to be able to deliver local and general election success by then. To do that, we need to scale up the current field team in a way that unblocks it, because it's currently at capacity. So I will work with our head of elections and Mary to build scalability into this structure to ensure that we can keep growing our electoral impact and will not be stuck with internal resource constraints. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next question. So to the chair of GPEx candidates. So the chair of GPEx is a leadership role on one of the 2 Green Party of England and Wales governing bodies. How would you describe your leadership style? So if we get Liz first. Liz, you might be muted.
I have unmuted myself. Yes, so this is an interesting question. I think my leadership style, and I had to look up names for this. I'm sure Adrian won't have to because he works in leadership coaching. But I endeavour to be democratic and to work with others. I wouldn't go off single-handedly making decisions. It's always cooperative. But I hope that there's also a bit of the transformational in me, that I am passionate and inspiring when the time is right. And I do have passion, really, for the Green Party and making it a success.
Great, thank you very much. If we could get Ash and Ben, same question.
So I'll take this one. So for us, one of the fundamental problems is the lack of understanding and the lack of representation a lot of people have. we think it'd be really important to ensure that, especially on contentious issues, that we are going into any discussion fully understanding the position of everybody on GPEx and everybody who holds a leadership role in any relevant representative groups. I've personally, whenever I've chaired anything before, which I've done a few times in various bodies, I've always taken the time to make sure that I fully understand the page that everybody involved is on before we go into a discussion. I think it's really important because different people have different levels of communication skills. Putting your views forward in a meeting is a skill. And I think it's really important as chair to recognize that you should be ensuring that everybody's being heard, irrespective of how strong their skill set is in terms of putting their point of view across in a meeting. So I always do that. I've worked really hard. I've even, in the last week, I've taken the time with 2 of our leadership candidates to discuss major party divisive issues with them to ensure that I understand their position, where they're coming from on those issues. That is the sort of thing that I think we should be doing generally. I think it's really important that the chair understands everyone, because that way the chair is able to make sure that they're being heard and make sure that they're able to convey what they're wanting to convey, rather than just relying on sort of in the moment how well any individual person comes across. I think that's a trap, and I think it's one that makes us slightly less representative as a party.
Thank you very much. If we could get Ewan, same question.
Thanks, Sarah. So my leadership style is human and collegiate. I will in particular empower all GPEx members to do the jobs that they're elected for and give everyone a voice, regardless of their ethnicity, age, gender, sexuality, or place of birth. An advantage I may have over the other candidates here is that you are welcome, and I would invite you to watch my chairing and leadership style, because all Bruton Town Council meetings since we had the revolution of coronavirus have been broadcast online over YouTube and are there on the Bruton Town Council YouTube account. I'd encourage you to watch the most recent one, where we invited the leaders of South Somerset District Council and Somerset County Council to present on the One Somerset unitary proposals. And you will also see, as well as being human and empowering of all of my councillors, I can be firm in sticking to agenda when I need to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could get Adrian answering the same question.
Okay, so my leadership style revolves around a number of things. I'm good at building consensus and agreement about what we're trying to achieve, where we really want to get to as a team. So that's one aspect I'll bring to the leadership style. I'm also good at creating a sense of genuine team. So if you talk to my colleagues on GPRC, hopefully they will tell you what my style is like, but I would typify it as building and bringing people together, getting that energy and passion focused behind the vision that we've created, and being very supportive of each other in that process. And overall as well, the other important thing about my leadership style is I actually deliver results as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we jump to the next question. So what action would you have taken within GPEx if you were elected as chair at the time of George Floyd was murdered and an international Black Lives Matter movement spread across the world? So if we could get Ewan answering that first.
Thank you. So the first thing I would do is I'd actually ask Greens of Colour, because I think one of the things we need to do in all such situations, if we seek to be a genuine party of a wider movement, is to look outwards first and have the humility to listen. The Green Party has many assets to bring, but first it needs to understand. We can obviously offer our leaders, our spokespeople, our 358 councillors, and many campaigners and activists. But there are so many people other sort of beyond us out there in the community. So I'd have wanted to include, presumably by setting up Zoom communications in the current world as soon as possible with Greens of Colour, I would ask them to tell us what would be the most appropriate response. And then we would start planning using the skills of all of the elected members of GPEx in their appropriate roles, whether it is campaigns, external communications, internal communications, etc., etc. We cannot be an effective Green Party without first understanding before attempting to communicate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If I could get Liz to answer the same question. You're muted. There we go.
Yeah, of course, I was actually chair during the time of this sort of explosion of activity and action around Black Lives Matters. And I have to say, as GPEx chair, I didn't really see that it was for GPEx to take specific action, but I know that the Polcom did indeed consult with Greens of Colour about what they would like to be said. The staff have discussed and taken forward ideas around how we can respond. And I understand that we're now proposing to do some work with Collective Liberation Project. And we have had ongoing attempts at diversity and improving diversity in the party. And I do feel passionately about this. And I have met twice with the chair of Greens of Colour. And, you know, I wish we could do more. Polcom is political committee, which is a subcommittee of GPEx, which has the leaders on it and councillors and others.
Great, thank you very much. If we could get Adrian answering the same question.
Thank you. I think it's a difficult question, because the easy answer is that we should raise our voices in support of Black Lives Matter. And in fact, there were statements at the time to that effect. I think the hard thing to do is actually to do what Ewan said and actually talk to Greens of Colour, and actually to look at our own privilege and the systems and processes we have in place and how those are innately exclusive and stop people from participating. So we don't have good representation from BAME communities, and we need to understand why that is. And also the other factor is we also have to look at our policy framework and the language we're using when we campaign on the environment. A simple example being to stop campaigning for the planet for future generations, when in fact the impact of climate breakdown has already been massively felt in Africa and the Southern Hemisphere anyway, already. And we need to acknowledge that and include that in our language. And we need to go through and look at our policy frameworks and see to what extent there is historic colonialism embedded in our policy framework, and seek to remove that as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. If I could get Ash and Ben answering the same question.
I'll fill this one. I'd mainly echo what you and Adrian have said so far, really. I think something, once communicated with Greens of Colour, it's an important step then to make sure that all GPEx members understand the language that the BLM movement was using. Things like, you know, what does defund the police actually stand for? Because that was the word that get tossed around a lot, and it's important to understand what these terms mean, understand that we're supportive of the ideologies they're presenting. The way we talk about climate change has to change as well. We need to sort of accept that the effects of climate change, while they're not here yet massively as they are in other countries, certain countries are about to become completely destroyed by climate change, and they do largely come from the African continent. So it's important that we look at our policy framework as well, like Adrian said, and recognise that there is policy in there, and there are past discussions we've had with organisations that have promoted racist policy framework as well, that we need to look back and understand that those were incorrect, and things like population matters and so forth. We need to understand that it's important that we as Greens represent a climate policy that is fair for everybody and not just the country we live in.
Great, thank you very much. So that's all of the pre-prepared questions. I'll just get the Q&A box up. So how about we take this question from Daniel Laycock. I don't know if panelists, you can open up the Q&A tab and see the questions. So I'll just read it out. So how would you effectively ensure as chair we change the party for the better, but while bringing consensus and being impartial throughout your tenure as chair? So if I could get Adrian answering that first, please.
Nothing like starting with a difficult question. Thank you, Daniel. So in terms of how to do this, fundamentally, this comes about building trust. And trust is built on 4 key platforms. So we have to start, as chair, you have to be honest and open in your dealings with people. Say what you mean, only say things about people that you would say to them. You have to then start being reliable and actually do what you say, and being really clear on getting shared expectations of each other. Finally, you have to start to think about care. And by care, I mean actually caring for the other person that you're dealing with and the other people, and to ensure that we understand each other's motivations, and together to start to agree what it is that we are jointly in service of and that we care about achieving. Once you've actually got that trust in place, it enables you to have those difficult conversations, to actually work through contentious and difficult issues, and actually come out of the other side of those conversations still working together, and actually resolve to commit to deliver something that will move us forward. So that's the process that I would follow and work through that. The challenge then is in terms of actually translating that into day-to-day to action. I think the impartiality question is quite interesting, because it is actually difficult to be impartial. But again, if you talk to my colleagues on GPRC, they will tell you that actually I do drive to achieve the outcome, and I'm not completely wedded to getting my own way and my views at all time, because that's going to really kill the process if you insist on winning. It's not about winning, it's about working together to create a shared outcome we can all commit to.
Great, thank you very much. If we could get Ewan next.
Thank you, Sarah. I thought Adrian's answer was excellent, actually. So I go back to the previous one about Black Lives Matter. We need to look outwards as a party across all dimensions. And I'll give 2 examples of that. Over the past week, I can't remember the reason, but I was looking back at the 2015-2016 election campaigns, and I came across a fantastic video of now Councillor Jude English in Bristol with the Guardian journalist John Harris, who was showing how the Green Party, if it made the effort to go out into more socially disadvantaged communities such as Lawrence Hill in Bristol, it was able to get a hearing where we might perceive as not getting a hearing. Secondly, and one of the very privileged positions we're in as candidates, having put ourselves forward to you, is we receive questions from all sorts of members of the Green Party. And I've received questions from liberation groups where I'm certainly not an expert in the issues facing those groups. I was very privileged earlier today to have a conversation for an hour and 15 minutes with a member of one of these groups, digging through the issues behind the set of questions that they'd asked. That was a fantastic experience. And I think generally we need to get out and do more. But the other point I'd make is actually we should do like stick to doing the jobs that we're electing to. So focus on being chair of GPEx and listening to everyone, not trying to change particular policies that happen to be your passion, not trying to change governance structures. Let the transition team and the holistic review do that. All stick to our jobs and we'll do a lot better.
Sorry, I was muted. Great, thank you very much. Ash and Ben, same question.
Sure, yeah, I can take this one. I think probably one of the things that's really missing is slightly more direct accountability, especially like from the position of chair. I think in terms of being impartial, I think realistically we're a fairly broad church party, and whoever's in whatever role, there are always going to be members that don't necessarily agree with them on any issue, and I think it's virtually impossible to elect somebody to a GPEx role without them having made clear their views. But I think one really important way of ensuring that you're being impartial in the way that you're actually carrying out your job is to check back in with people. So when people raise specific issues with you and you raise them within your capacity as chair, to always check back directly with that person or with any group that's contacted you and say, here's what I've done, here's how I've raised it, here's what's happened because of it. And if you do that on every issue that you're asked to bring up, everything that you're asked to ensure is heard, you are making yourself directly accountable, because that person then has a straight report on what exactly you've done. If they don't think it's sufficient, then they can broadcast that, they can come back to you and ask you to do more. And through doing that, regardless of the issue, regardless of who's raising it, you're ensuring that you are effectively satisfying the people that you're supposed to be giving a voice to, that you are actually doing that. And if you do that with every issue, you are by default being impartial. You are applying the same standard to every issue, wherever it's brought to your table. As far as bringing consensus, I think, again, like I referred to earlier, taking the time to talk with people on decision-making bodies and make sure you fully understand them is a really important step towards that, because it means that you can clear up any potential misunderstandings between people before they come to head. And that isn't a silver bullet. It doesn't magically create consensus, but it does mean that we are all absolutely certain where we all stand, which makes a much better foundation for people finding the middle ground, finding the consensus, finding the agreement. As chair, you can't force consensus, but you can try and foster the best possible scenario in order for it to be cultivated naturally within GPEx.
Thank you. If I could get Liz answering the same question.
Yeah, hi. I'm slightly puzzled by this question because I don't quite see where partiality might come into it, because what GPEx is responsible for is for running the day-to-day operations of the party. And there are other governance bodies that are reflecting other elements of what running the party is about. So I think that I have certainly been chairing the party for a better future because of the work that is being done by absolutely marvelous staff to improve our digital tools, to start working on project together, talking to outsiders, not just talking to us inside about what we think, but asking outsiders how they view the party, what do they want from us, and actually reaching out. And the success is extraordinary. The funding, the supporters, the membership that is starting to come through as a result of this new strategy. That's what we've got consensus around, building a better and more successful party that will deliver electoral success as well in May, I'm sure, and beyond. I'm pleased to say we're already planning for 2024. And we've only done this kind of long-term planning once before, and that was to get Caroline Lucas elected. We're doing it again.
Thank you for that. We could, so that's everyone answered that question. let's pick another one. How about from Deborah Cooper? How will you contribute to supporting the campaign in the Welsh Government or Senedd elections next year? And sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. So if I could get Ewan answering first.
Thanks. So the short answer to how we'll support the Welsh elections is through the field team. So we have a fantastic head of elections in Chris Williams as regional coordinator for the Southwest, and as spokesperson of the Regional Coordinators Network back in 2018. We were part of creating the current field team structure with the then chief executive. That means for the first time that we had the field organiser roles all across the country. What we need to do is put together with that a set of local Welsh fundraising initiatives which Action Network is able to deliver. Like, thankfully, we now have Action Network. I was party to a fantastic presentation by the London campaign manager a couple of weeks ago, where they were showing all of the fundraising that London was able to put in place for Sian, but had to put on pause because the election was postponed until next May. That was funding 4 members of staff for London. We need to work with the Welsh Party, just as we need to work with all of the regions to skill up so that we're able to fundraise for these campaigns. In the Southwest, we are having discussions about how we're going to do that. And maybe with Action Network, we could do county by county fundraising using Action Network ahead of the elections next May, because we have them in every county, as well as Bristol and West of England Metro Mayor. Our identities for those elections are county. They're in Cornwall, they're in Devon, they're in Somerset. So use the field team. It's moved on a lot, and we need to ensure that it's able to build for the future and scale, as I said earlier.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could get Liz answering the same question. You're still muted right now, Liz.
I think I already have answered this question, haven't I?
Sorry, have you?
Which question are you asking about?
This is the Senedd elections question.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay. So as I understand it, the head of elections has already presented to GPEx on what we're going to be doing in terms of developing our strategy over the next 4 years. And Wales is going to get an injection of activity and funding, I think, that it hasn't seen before, and a really good strategy. So I'm no expert in this. I leave it to the experts, but it sounds to me as if we're going to make real progress in Wales this time round.
Okay, thank you. We could get Adrian answering the same question.
Thank you. I have to echo some of what Liz says. I'm not an expert in the area, and I don't know what is already in hand for supporting Wales. However, I think it's really important that we do get representation in the Senedd. I think it's a crucial devolved government that we aren't represented in, and we do need to be seen there. So it's going to have to be a matter of how can we actually find the resources to support them, both in terms of people and money, and crucially translation, so that we can put everything out in twin language. We can't afford to be reprimanded again by the Electoral Commission in Wales for not actually putting all documentation out in both languages. So that's something crucial that definitely needs to be made sure that we pick up that going forwards.
Great, thank you very much. Then Ben and Ash, if we could get the response to the same question, please.
I think Ben should take this one probably.
Yeah, I've been a member in Wales before and served at leader for a while in the Welsh Party. We've always been underrepresented in Wales, and it's a sad fact that it's the one sort of barrier that's still facing the GPEW. So any further support we can give the party, I'll have a conversation with the Welsh leadership. It sounds like there are plans in place from the campaigns team as to how we progress in these elections. But breaking into the Senedd is an absolute sort of priority that should be really at the heart of what the party's planning for its election strategy. It's a devolved government we've never gotten onto. It's elected by a more proportional system, if not perfect system. So to show that we can really win elections across the board and win in Wales as well, other than our current one councillor there, will be a really important step for showing that we as a united party can do well across both sides of the border. And like Adrian said, we really need to make sure that the funding is there in place to do dual language publications, because not only the Electoral Commission, but certain voters in certain parts of Wales will absolutely tear into us if it's not there in place. And no doubt that Plaid will make the most of that as well.
Okay, thank you. How are we doing for time? I think we'd kind of scheduled in 5 questions.
We have 6 more minutes, Sarah.
Oh.
I mean, for chair questions.
Okay, so if I pick a question, and we'll try and limit you all to 1 minute to answer it. How about this one from Hannah Graham? How would you ensure that GPEx are in touch with and are representative of the wider membership when making decisions? So if I could get Adrian answering that one first.
Okay, I think, as I said, one of my priorities would be to actually ensure that we have better communications through and across the party. So as part of the political strategy and fundraising processes that we're going at the moment, we've been out and we've talked to all the regions, and we've been out and we've talked to all the liberation groups to get their inputs into that process. So we're starting to do that, and I'm hoping there'll be something coming out in the next couple of weeks, taking that process further. And the simple answer is, how do you make sure that you are representative? Is you go and you talk to people, and crucially, you listen to the answers that you get back, you seek to really understand, and then you take them into account in those decisions.
Great, thank you very much. Then if we get Ash and Ben, same question.
Am I unmuted? Yeah. So I think we absolutely need to be engaging with all of our representative groups, particularly our liberation groups. I think they are largely unheard on the exec in a lot of cases. I also, I've touched on this a little bit previously, but I think that by creating a new platform through which we can communicate what we're all doing, and exec members are invited to express what they've been doing over the last few months, what they're going to be going into doing. It creates the start of a dialogue between GPEx and the membership that I don't think exists at the moment, except through the odd email sent back and forth. I think by having a more open, more public transport for that platform for that kind of communication is going to really help us to be more representative and to be more engaged. At the moment, I think GPEx often feels like something that happens in a room somewhere that most people aren't privy to, and that all we really ever see is what comes out and not what goes in, not the discussions that actually happen. I think that's the thing we need to change. I think people need to understand more about our processes, understand what's being said, who's saying it, and what they're actually achieving by doing so. And through doing that, we can invite more prudent analysis of what we're doing, and therefore give people the tools they need to actually hold us to account, to ask us questions, to give us real input about what we're doing.
Great, thank you very much. If I could get Liz answering the same question, please.
Yeah, I'm a bit puzzled by this question, in the sense that clearly GPEx is elected by a process of this nature to try and deliver a better, more successful party, which is, I know, what we all need. So you know, I like the way the Festival of Democracy has been run this time round, which was an initiative the staff took to say, how can we get more people involved in the governance of the party? And I really welcomed that. I hate the fact that until recently, GPEx was never subject to election because very few people were actually standing against any other candidate. So trying to improve the job descriptions and get people to understand what's involved in running the party has been incredibly important. And I've said to my own local party, you know, they take so little interest even in conference. I'm saying, what do we need to do to get people to engage more than simply at the local level? Come to conference, put your views in. And we even tried on GPEx, actually, instead of having paper minutes for people to download from the website and so on, was actually to have one of our members who's an actor to provide a summary that would be delivered verbally via the website so that people could connect more easily with what we were doing. But it's not an easy problem to solve.
Okay, thank you very much. And then Ewan, if we could get the same question, please.
So thank you, Sarah. So I hear what the concerns Hannah and Ash are raising. I guarantee, I'm going to refer back to the previous responses, under my chairship, GPEx will, I believe, be the most inclusive it's ever been, and that all voices will be listened to. Sadly, that's not been the case. People have not felt it's been the case. I'd actually look elsewhere to say where there's been some best practice. The regions have been meeting with the field team and been showing how the party works very effectively with staff and members from all backgrounds. GPEx can learn from such things, and more forums would be desirable. We can do better, we should do better. Better is possible, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. So how are we for time now? I think this is probably the end of the
Yeah,
chair.
we're 1 minute over questions to chairs, so probably time to move on to management coordinators.
Okay, well, thank you very much all chair candidates for joining us. And I'll pass over to Martin, who's going to go through the management coordinator, Hustings.
Right. Good evening for the second part of this evening. There's usually a moment in plenaries at conference where half the audience gets up and leaves because they've seen the bit they want to see, but I hope that you will stay with us for this because it's an important role within GPEx, ensuring that the structure of the party works in the right way, is managed, I suppose. They were randomly ordered, but they have come out alphabetically. So, Richard, can I ask you first for your 2-minute outline?
Okay, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
Good. Okay. Richard Bierman, standing for Management Coordinator. I've been a member of the party since 2003, and I've held various roles at local and regional level. Particularly currently, I'm the local party treasurer in Norwich and the regional treasurer for the Eastern region. And one thing I think is really important is that the finances of the party are sound at every level. That doesn't mean we have to have loads and loads of money to do things, but we do have to spend the money we have very wisely. So I want to be involved in that as well. I've also had 8 years as a county councillor in Norfolk from up until 2017. So I've been at the coalface of representing green issues, if you like, at local government level, as well as standing in the parliamentary election in 2017 for Norwich South. So I think the experience of both being a councillor and holding various roles within the party gives me a broad support and understanding of how those bits of the party work. But for this particular role as management coordinator, it's about governance and human resources practices. I'll try not to use any terminology too much if we can spell it out in full. So the aim of the management coordinator is partly that, and also I've got experience outside the Green Party. I had a lot of experience in charities, both national and local, being chairs and finance directors and vice chairs and safeguarding governors in various schools. I think that's a really important aspect of what governance is ensuring that the right procedures and policies are in place. In theory, if the management is going well, it shouldn't be a subject for discussion. It's obviously been a great subject for discussion over several years for various reasons, and I see there are some questions coming up on staffing levels and staff turnover, which is another aspect. However, the Green Party is the Green Party. We still need to put climatic and social change at the forefront of our ideas and agendas. And while we've got to conduct organisational change, it shouldn't interfere with the goal of getting Greens elected at every level and changing the way this country thinks. Because if we don't change the way this country thinks, I'm afraid the future doesn't look very bright. I think I'm ready now to step up and do that role and have the experience that can be valuable to be on GPEx. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Richard. Very well timed. Thank you. Matt and Florence, are you both speaking or just one of you?
I'm afraid actually Florence has given her apology. She's not very well tonight, so she's sorry to all those on the call. So it will just be me, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, can't be helped. Good, thanks. If you'd like to start, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, apologies from Florence for not being here. We are standing as a job share. She'll be involved in future hustings and is around for you to ask her questions. In terms of myself, I'd probably start with my Green Party journey. We've all had Green Party journeys. And I joined the Green Party in 2016 after the EU referendum. I think like a lot of people, I was feeling a bit lost and despondent. And I got involved in my local party. And it was probably the most wonderful thing that's happened to me in my life. The inspirational time spent with inspirational people. I've been involved in my party for 4 years and done a range of roles, general election candidate, coordinator. So I feel like I know the core basics of the Green Party and what we're all about there. And wherever I'm feeling a little bit jaded about the world, I remember some of those local Green Party meetings and what we're all doing it for. And that's my Green Party experience. Professionally, I've had 10 years of management experience in the public sector, private sector, and actually now the charity sector where I work. But I did, up until April, I worked for the Green Party for 3 years, first as governance administrator, and then as governance manager. So that meant really overseeing and helping implement all Green Party processes, trying to make sure that they worked as well as possible for members. Sometimes that wasn't hugely possible. I understand the structural challenges with our processes very, very well after those 3 years. I think despite the best intents of all sorts of Green Party people, there are real issues there, which I'll talk about later. So I worked on a variety of things there, including, I think, crucially for this role, safeguarding. And I should pay tribute actually to the predecessor in the role, Zoe, who's standing for elections, who helped with me to design the new safeguarding policy, which was implemented after a very serious safeguarding matter in 2019. So I think I've got good experience of Green Party processes and specific Green Party processes. And my wonderful colleague Florence has the professional HR experience. And she spent 3 years working in HR and now works for a major charity. So we think that together we have the professional and the party-specific experience needed to really lift all of our processes and policies, not just to make sure the Green Party is always compliant, but also to go further. And I'll be talking about my vision shortly, our vision, but part of that is to really make sure the Green Party is a beacon for best practice in HR.
Good. Thanks very much, Matt. Slightly over, but that's okay as well. Now we've got some questions that were sent in advance, not as many as were sent in for the chair. I think we had something like 11 in advance for that this time. But we have the same first question up, which is your first 3 priorities if elected to the role of management coordinator. What would they be? So if we start this time with Matt.
Yes. Well, so I mentioned right at the end of my remarks, making the Green Party a beacon for HR. 3 practical policies to really start with on that. First of all is to seize the moment we find ourselves in, this new age. The air it's been tragic, but it's also electric with change in our working practices. So many more of us are working from home. Now, I know that the party's been making great strides towards this, but I think it's time to really go the full way and make sure that every role in the Green Party can be worked from home. Now that opens up Green Party applications to people from all over our two nations of England and Wales. I think that would make a tremendous difference. Secondly, seizing the other moment we find ourselves with, the Black Lives Matter moment. Again, there's been lots of good intent over the years and good work, but we really need to actually start putting some money behind it. Now, we could create paid internships for young people of colour. The current law does allow for training opportunities to be paid and for that to be specified by race. The time is now to do that. And I'd like to see that actually throughout the country so that you'd have regional Green parties offering internships for young people of colour. And then finally, again, putting really our practices where our beliefs are and allowing our trade union representatives and staff trade union representatives at the very heart of decision making. That includes them sitting in and taking an active role in every single management meeting of the staff, taking an active role in every single GPEx meeting and every single AFCOM meeting. One of the wonderful golden threads of Green Party policy is the idea that people who, when decisions affect people, those people are in the room, and that should be the case for our staff. And I think if we started with those three, we could make a start to actually making our HR policy and our general processes a real beacon that other organisations would like to copy.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Richard.
Yes, thank you. One of the priorities of being on GPEx is to work collaboratively with other coordinators. In any governance body, the individual volunteers, and they are volunteers who join the organisation as holding the staff and other leaders to account, don't have individual powers to do things. It's a collective responsibility, whether it's finance, management, elections, or campaigns, or anything we do it as a body. And I think one of the things I want to do is work collaboratively on GPEx to make sure we reach decisions by consensus and we're all behind them. Secondly, I'd look at communications with the regions and local parties. There's a lot been done already through the field officer network and the regional committees, but more could be done. I'll give you a brief example. Today, as Eastern Region Treasurer, I had an email from the new head of finance. Great, and welcome to the team. I hope she's got some excellent experience. But I do think our CEO or our staff team should let us know in the regions when new people are appointed to key positions. Apparently she's been there since April, but I hadn't found out until today. Maybe I'm not looking at the right parts of the party, but I am following the party website. So we can do more, I think, about notifying people of important changes. Finally, I'd look at safeguarding. Yes, we do have a good safeguarding policy, and great it is, but how well embedded it is in local parties and regional parties. There's a lot of work to do in safeguarding because it's a cultural change, making good safeguarding, not just a management and policy change.
Sorry, thanks very much, Richard. You came in a little under time there. Right, now this is a slightly more technical question, but very specific to the role. What experience do you have at overseeing workforce planning? The party has recently had a very high turnover of staff, and effective planning in this area is essential. So if we'll take it the other way around because I've got no other way of alternating it. So Richard, if you'd like to go first.
Thanks very much. Yes, I was quite surprised to hear that, but it's an unfortunate situation for any organisation to be in. I think the key thing for GPEx is to understand why they're having a high turnover of staff and whether there's any commonality of it. You do get changes in staff in an organisation. It's a natural cycle of things. What you don't want is big changes at one time. And if there aren't any underlying causes, we need to look at perhaps the individual circumstances of why staff have left and how they have left. One of the things in my statement I talk about is that being on management and being involved in human resources is not just about hiring people. Yes, you do need to have a good, robust recruitment process and get the best people for your organisation, but it's also about how and when and how they leave. You need to look at the people who leave and why they've left, and whether you need to change things to make sure they don't leave so quickly. Staff retention, volunteer retention is all very, very important across the organisation. So I'd want to unpick that. I'd also want to try and communicate that well, the value that paid staff bring to any organisation. And I know from my local party experience, having a part-time volunteers coordinator paid by the local party, even for 7 hours a week during the election, has tripled our capacity to get volunteers to do things and deliver on elections. This party doesn't operate with just paid staff, it operates with volunteers as well, and we need to make sure they're all equally valued. I take the point on board about internships as well. It's a good way in sometimes, but they need to be very clearly structured as to when they're paid, how they're paid, and what they're paid. The name of internship has had some bad practices associated with it, and we don't want that to be the case of the Green Party. So it's a question of analyse, decide, recommend and implement in terms of staff turnover.
Thank you, Richard. Matt, would you like to come in on that one as well?
Yes, well, I think I'll divide my answer into two. The first bit is professional experience, and as I mentioned, I've had 10 years of experience in management in a variety of organisations, including times when there's been issues with workforces and difficult decisions have had to be made. My colleague Florence, in her HR background, has been involved in quite major work in this area, you know, job designing, job recruitment, induction. So she has the professional experience actually of workforce and how to keep people infused and retained. And I think it'd be wonderful if she could bring that experience to GPEx. On a personal note, though, as a former Green Party staff member, this is an issue that strikes at my heart because, you know, I saw a lot of turnover despite the best intent wishes of all sorts of people, and it really is a tragedy for the party. When someone walks out of that door, they can walk out with so much knowledge and experience, and the value of that is huge. There are people, and I won't embarrass them by naming them, but who work at the party now where if the party lost them, if we lost them, that would be equivalent, I would argue, to losing, you know, a good 10% of our annual income in terms of the knowledge that they have and the commitment that they have. So you've got to retain those people. Now, actual solutions that I suggest as to how we do that, I think part of it is valuing people. It is allowing people to progress in the Green Party. I think sometimes there's almost a deferential thing where the Green Party goes outside for external staff, for silver bullet hires that will make everything good. We need to trust in our own people and trust in our own members sometimes to step up to staff roles. People are the Green Party's biggest asset, and we really, really need to use them. So practical ways of doing that I'd like to explore with our senior staff. Progression pay, so that people who've been in the role and done a good job for 2 years get an automatic pay rise. We don't have that at the moment. That's best practice elsewhere, and I think it'd be great to retain those skills and knowledge. That's a practical suggestion of what we could start to do. And then the final, really quickly, I think it's also making sure that all staff are involved in all aspects of party work, including work they're not used to. So getting every staff member involved in campaigning. It's nothing more exciting than knocking on doors. Getting everyone involved, if possible, and in appropriate ways, I think could help retention.
Good, right. Thanks, Matt. We're now going over to the ones that have come in on Q&A during the meeting. There are, oh, sorry, it's coming halfway down the sequence. I'll go back to the top. As management coordinators, how will you ensure clear channels between Green Party staff and the executive? Now that's obviously, Sarah, you want to come in on this?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I clicked answer live because I thought you were asking it to the candidate.
No, I was asking the candidates. Okay, so if we, Matt, you've obviously got experience of one end of this, of being communicated with. If you could go first on this.
Yes, of course. So I spent 3 years attending every GPEx meeting under a variety of chairs and taking the notes. I think that was actually just useful generally in getting a good experience of what works on GPEx and what doesn't, which I try and apply. But in terms of staff communication, again, I go back to the role of the trade unions. You might be able to tell I'm a passionate trade unionist myself. And I think the value of decision making is hugely enhanced when you have trade union members not just there listening, but there as full participants, not with voting rights, because that would be against the Constitution, but that they're able to take part in the discussions and actually give their views and their experience and the views of their members to inform decisions at every level. And that also helps with communicating GPEx decisions back to staff members. Trade unions meet, the trade union meets regularly. And the trade union is also very good. When I talk about staff, you can think, oh, it's just 20 people in the London office. The Green Party has about 40 to 50 staff members across the two nations. And the trade union is a good body for communicating with them. So having them at the table is absolutely key. And I think just another additional point, if you start getting the communication between GPEx and staff members right, that will help again the communication between GPEx and the rest of the party. If you use some of those practices and apply them more widely, that's when you can start getting that communication going. And I take and listen to the points that were made, including I think by Richard, about how as a party we need to get better at making sure that all members know what's happening on GPEx and feel abreast of the situation.
Thanks very much. That's very brief. Richard, how would you like to come in on that one as well?
Yes, so the question is about how the management coordinator would manage staff relations. I think it's very important to remember we have a staff structure, we have a chief executive. GPEx appointed that chief executive to run the staffing organisation. There is a fairly fine line in some organisations, and I use my experience from school governance, between the governance and management. When governors get too closely involved with management, that is where you tend to get difficulties because staff are being pulled in too many different directions. Not to say we're not interested, we're very interested in how good management works and who does it. So we need to set clear objectives. We need to set a strategy for the party. We need to then work out how we resource that strategy. And I don't just mean human resources, I mean volunteer resources, I mean financial resources, I mean office resources, down to the tables and chairs and the furniture. We all need to work out whether that's a good use of money. And then we need to monitor those activities. Monitoring is crucial, and monitoring needs to be appropriate and sometimes light touch, sometimes heavy touch. It kind of depends on where you are, but it's a cycle. The reason you monitor as a governing body is to understand how industrial relations, staff relations, union objectives are being met and delivered, and then you set new objectives to move the party forward. I think it's really important for the executive body, who is elected by the members and representing the members, not to become too closely allied with staff. There needs to be a clear division. I'm not saying we're not working alongside them. We're very important parts of the organisation, but we must work alongside them, and we must keep our roles respectively compartmentalised. I've seen too many organisations where the chief executive and the managing director or the head of the elected board of directors get intimately related, and it doesn't normally work. So I'll be avoiding that sort of thing, but I do think staff relations is a key issue for the organisation.
Good. Well, thanks very much for the both of you for those. Just a question. Obviously, questions are coming in on Q&A. Some of them are not particularly related to the role, but are issues that the individual is concerned with. So I'm not taking those because they aren't concerned with exploring this. There's an interesting one that's come in from Tom Hazel here at the top. How, as management coordinator, would you ensure that the Green Party hires young people who don't necessarily have traditional qualifications, such as a university degree, since these are inaccessible to many, and especially members of marginalised groups? In other words, how do we broaden our recruitment? And there was a separate question on diversity and encouraging diversity, and I think that you can cover both at the same time. So I think, Richard, it's your turn to go first this time.
Thank you very much, Martin. Yes, how do we engage with those sort of people and get them involved in the Green Party? I think I want to point to my track record about young people in Norwich Green Party. We've always striven to give opportunities to young people to get elected onto the council, and we've had people elected as young as 19 onto Norwich City Council. We've also striven to give them opportunities to work for the Green Party, and currently, I understand there are only 9 young Green councillors across the country, which out of 370 is pretty desperately poor, and 2 of them are in Norwich. So I point to my own track record in helping the party give opportunities at all levels for young people. And the other part of the question was about getting them on board, getting diversity. I come from part of the country where diversity is terrible. You know, I think it's under 3% the black and Asian and minority ethnic group in Norfolk, yet we really need to make opportunities. Whether they're, as Matt suggested, paid internships, one route, but I think all posts need to be open to all people of all backgrounds, and we need to make sure that our practices encourage them to apply. One of the reasons we don't get enough minorities as diversity in the Green Party is we don't make it easy for them to apply, and we need to do that. And I would be promoting that amongst the Green Party, both in work opportunities and in elected opportunities. So that would how I'd take that forward. Thank you.
Great. Great question. Thank you very much for that. First of all, there has to be an element of listening. So that's listening to the young Greens who have huge experience in this area. That's listening to Greens of colour. I think also actually listening to disabled Greens as well. I think that's another area where we really need to do a bit better to make sure that disabled people can access the party and can access working for the party. So there's a key element of listening there, but I think it's probably a bit of a cop-out if I just say I'm going to listen. I think I've got some practical ideas as well. First of all, as I think Richard has touched upon, we need to make crystal clear on every application that what we're looking for is not necessarily professional or university experience. It is skills that are applicable to the role, and that there are things in people's past that can actually enable them to really, really rise to the challenge. So making that clear in every application. I think this home working point I talked about earlier is also absolutely crucial. That opens up the chance of working to the Green Party to all sorts of people. Now, you know, I think we've got to be practical here. The way our current model works, if a job comes up and says for an entry-level job, it'll be in the London office. Say you're an 18-year-old just coming out of sixth form in Rotherham. Even getting that train ticket down, that's going to be a long journey. And yes, you can expense the train ticket, but you don't want to expense something that's £80. It's a lot of your income. Home working, interviews via Zoom, that could make a transformational difference to reaching out to marginalised communities. We've also got to make sure that where we advertise is more appropriately get to the right people, to people who we might not normally talk to. Now, I absolutely love The Guardian, like I'm sure everyone on this call, but we've got to stop advertising in The Guardian. Let's send applications for entry-level positions to sixth forms. Let's be really bold about this. Do everything we can within the confines of compliance and law to be the best possible Green Party and to actually lead the way to bold new areas that other organisations don't. If we don't do it, who will?
Right, good. I'm unmuted this time, so thanks. There's a couple of questions. There's quite a long one come in from Lois Davis, because I think we're running towards our last question, which is about the boundaries between elected members, volunteer officers, contracted staff. But I think it's also comes into another shorter question, which is the Green Party lay-led? In other words, is it led by the members or is it led by the staff? I think that's what Deborah means in that question.
And I think is it me to go first?
Yes, it is. I'm afraid you back again.
That's fine. I'm answering that question. Well, I think that the short answer is yes, and this comes on to wider issues of party structures. I think in the management role, it is absolutely crucial to have one document by your bedside every night. So it is the last thing you see before you go to sleep, the first thing when you wake up, and that is the party constitution. That is the document which sets out all where the party structures come from. And that constitution makes it crystal clear who's in charge of the party, and that's members, exercised through conference in the first instance, and then power devolved through conference to bodies like GPEx. So yes, members absolutely lead it. And I think that's where the role of GPEx is so interesting, because it plays the role as the mediator between that membership-owned thing, this wonderful, valuable thing about the Green Party, and the fact that Green Party operations, a lot of them are delivered by professionals. So yes, it is lay-led, and GPEx is at the crux of making sure that the communication between those two parts of the party works really, really well. I think ideally you should see the relationship as the staff being sort of the small, efficient, wonderful civil service of the Green Party, whereby the people making the decisions are not, 600 MPs, but 40,000 wonderful members across England and Wales. I think the Constitution, it sets that out, and that is the vision I try and adhere to and to make sure our processes stayed true to as management coordinator. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think the Constitution could do with some democratic change, and that's a whole other debate. But in answer to the short question, yes, it's lay-led, yes, it should continue to be lay-led, and yes, I think there's a clear vision of how staff and members can work together. And final thing, in my experience of 3 years, yes, sometimes it can be difficult, but a lot of the time it works really well. Actually, staff and members share one thing, which is a commitment to a much better world, and so it does work.
Good, thanks very much, Matt. Richard, and I think this is probably our last bit before we come to the closing remarks. So,
is the Green Party led by the members? Well, yes and no is the answer. I had a question earlier somewhere about who's the boss if you say that to the Green Party. If you go to a business or some other simpler organisation, it's easy. You can answer that with one question to who's the boss. However, membership organisations, charities, government groups, people using large numbers of volunteers, it's not a straightforward answer. It has to be a complex answer. And all of the people at management level, GPEx, GPRC, the staff, the chief executive, our elected Greens, our MPs, need to understand how these bits fit together, because there's governance at all levels in the Green Party. You could say it's a federation of local parties. That's one way of looking at it. I think it's much more than that, because there is a much more cohesive structure needed to drive the party forward and to do what it's set out to do and achieve its political aims. But it's very important that we clearly define what membership rights and responsibilities members have when they join, and how they get involved locally, how they get involved nationally, how they get involved internationally. Some parts of the Green Party are very good at that in terms of members having direct access to policy making at conference. Some people think we could do a lot better at that, and I'm sure that will be the work of policy coordinators other than policy. I'm an expert in all types of governance, really, not just the governance of political parties. So I want to bring some of that experience as to what works and what doesn't work to the others. However, I will say something, the Constitution does matter. It is your Bible when you're in a local party or an organisation. The Constitution is what should guide all the senior officers and the members of the executive who are elected. And I will take that responsibility very seriously going forward. And I see it as a privilege to be able to serve the Green Party in the role of GPEx, and hope you will support me in getting that role in August.
Right, thank you very much, Richard. There have been some other very interesting questions that have come in. I didn't take one because it seemed to favour someone who actually knew what the Green Party office currently looks like. But thank you very much, everybody, and everybody who's tuned in to listen. The recording will, I understand, be sent to the attendees and also be available elsewhere. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everybody who's taken part this evening. It's been a very interesting experiment for us in actually running an event like this, and from our point of view, it's worked, I think, well enough. And we hope to see you and more back tomorrow night for our second episode. Thank you very much indeed for coming.